ancient town remain in the modern settlement of the same name, situated about 16 kilometers 10 mi from the mouth of the Cydnus River, which empties into the eastern Mediterranean about 130 kilometers 80 mi of the eastern tip of Cyprus. No one knows when Tarsus was first settled or by whom, for it is a city of great antiquity. First mentioned in secular history as being captured by the Assyrians, it was never a strongly fortified city. Tarsus was thereafter in servitude and paid tribute much of the time to the successive powers of Assyria, Persia, Greece, then to the Seleucid kings, and finally to Rome. Tarsus was situated in a fertile coastal area where flax was raised, and this, in turn, supported flourishing industries such as the weaving of linens and the making of tents. Fabrics woven of goat's hair and o textoi acute muritra longo, take 1068-30. 11. 25, 26, and no doubt he passed through there on some of his missionary journeys. Act 15. 23, 41. 18. 22, 23. Take Partak. A deity worshipped by the Avites, whom the king of Assyria settled in the territory of Samaria after he took the Israelites of the 10-tribe kingdom into exile. 2 Kai 17. 31. According to the Babylonian Talmud, Partak had the form of an ass. Sanhedrin 63b. Based on the conclusion that the name Partak may be comparable to the Pahlavi Persian word Tarthak, intense darkness, hero of darkness, it has been suggested that Partak may have been a demon of the lower regions. Aside from the brief reference to Partak in the scriptures, however, nothing can be stated with any certainty concerning the nature of this deity. Tartan. Assyrian writings indicate that the title Tartan applied to an officer of high rank, probably second only to the king. Concerning the order of the titles in Assyrian eponym lists, James B. Pritchard, editor of Ancient Near Eastern Texts 1974, p. 274, comments. Later on, the position of the official within the hierarchy was decisive for the sequence, the highest official Artanu following the king immediately, while important palace officers and the governors of the foremost provinces took their turn in well-established order. See chronology eponym Lemu lists. An inscription by Assyrian king Ashurbanipal, now in the British Museum, reads, in part, I became very angry on account of these happenings, my soul was aflame. I called the Tartan official, the governors, and also their assistants, and gave immediately the order. Ancient Near Eastern Texts, p. 296. King Sennacherib sent the Tartan along with other officials, including the Rabshakeh, the king's chief cupbearer who acted as spokesman, to deliver an ultimatum of capitulation to Jerusalem. The Tartan is listed first, possibly because his was the superior position. 2 Kai 18. 17, 28-35. A Tartan was sent by King Sargon II of Assyria to besiege the city of Ashdod, in the days of Isaiah the prophet. Issa 20. 1. Tartarus Tartar Middle Rus. A prison-like, a base condition into which God cast disobedient angels in Noah's day. This word is found but once in the inspired scriptures, at 2 Peter 2. 4. The apostle writes, God did not hold back from punishing the angels that sinned, but, by throwing them into a Tartarus, delivered them to pits of dense darkness to be reserved for judgment. The expression throwing them into Tartarus is from the Greek verb tarmiddle.taro and so includes within itself the word Tartarus. A parallel text is found at Jude 6. And the angels that did not keep their original position but forsook their own proper dwelling place he is reserved with eternal bonds under dense darkness for the judgment of the great day. Showing when it was that these angels forsook their own proper dwelling place, Peter speaks of the spirits in prison, who had once been disobedient when the patience of God was waiting in Noah's days, while the ark was being constructed. 1 P 3. 19, 20. This directly links the matter to the account at Genesis 6. 1-4 concerning the sons of the true God who abandoned their heavenly abode to cohabit with women in pre-flood times and produced children by them, such offspring being designated as Nephilim. See Nephilim. Sons of God. From these texts it is evident that Tartarus is a condition rather than a particular location, inasmuch as Peter, on the one hand, speaks of these disobedient spirits as being in pits of dense darkness, while Paul speaks of them as being in heavenly places from which they exercise a rule of darkness as wicked spirit forces. 2 Pe 2. 4. F6. 10-12 The dense darkness similarly is not literally a lack of light but results from their being cut off from illumination by God as renegades and outcasts from his family, with only a dark outlook as to their eternal destiny. Tartarus is, O textoi acute miritra longo. Taxation 1069 is below heaven. In it were imprisoned the lesser gods, Cronus and the other Titan spirits. As we have seen, the Tartarus of the Bible is not a place but a condition and, therefore, is not the same as this Tartarus of Greek mythology. However, it is worth noting that the mythological Tartarus was presented not as a place for humans, but as a place for superhuman creatures. So, in that regard there is a similarity, since the scriptural Tartarus is clearly not for the detention of human souls, compare Mount 11:23, but is only for wicked superhuman spirits who are rebels against God. The condition of utter debasement represented by Tartarus is a precursor of the abyssing that Satan and his demons are to experience prior to the start of the 1,000-year reign of Christ. This, in turn, is to be followed after the end of the 1,000 years by their utter destruction in the second death. Mount 25. 41. Re 20. 1-3, 7-10, 14. Tatanay. The governor of the Persian province beyond the river during the reign of Darius his spies. When the Jews again started to rebuild the temple in Darius' second year 520 BCE, Tatanay and his colleagues came to Jerusalem to conduct an inquiry. The Jews appealed to Cyrus' original decree. So Tatanay wrote to Darius asking if such a decree had been issued, as the Jews contended. The answer received confirmed Cyrus' decree and the validity of the temple work, and it warned Tatanay not to interfere but to render material assistance to the Jews. This, Tatanay proceeded to do. As for 24. 6. 13. To 2. A permanent mark or design on the skin made by cutting the skin to produce scars or by inserting coloring matter under the skin. The Israelites were forbidden to engage in this practice, one that was common among some other ancient peoples. 19. 28 For example, there were times when the Egyptians tattooed the names or symbols of their deities on their breast or arms. By complying with Jehovah's law not to disfigure their bodies, the Israelites would have stood out as different from other nations. 14. 1, 2 The prohibition would also have impressed upon them a proper respect for the human body as God's creation, to be used in honoring him. PS 100. 3. 139. 13-16. Row 12. 1. Tor. The 22nd and last letter of the Hebrew alphabet. The name of the letter literally means mark. Compare as 9. 4. FTN. In the Hebrew, it is the initial letter in each of the 8 verses of Psalm 119. 169-176. Taxation. An assessment of money, of goods, or of labor imposed by an authority on persons or property. Forms of taxation have long been employed to support the services of government, public officials, and also priests. The taxes that were imposed anciently included a tithe, tribute, toll, head or poll tax, and tax on consumer items, exports, imports, and goods taken through a country by merchants. Taxes for maintaining Jehovah's sanctuary. The service of the sanctuary was maintained through taxation. Obligatory tithing provided a major source of maintenance for the Aaronic priests and Levites, and on at least one occasion, they received a share of the war booty in accordance with the tax stipulated by Jehovah. New 18. 26-29. 31. 26-47. See tithe. Jehovah also instructed Moses that after he took a census, each person registered was to give a half shekel $1. 10 as Jehovah's contribution, it serving in behalf of the tent of meeting. X 30. 12-16 It appears that it became customary for the Jews to give a fixed amount every year, even though a census was not taken annually. Jehosh, for example, called for the sacred tax ordered by Moses. 2ch 24. 6, 9 The Jews of Nehemiah's time obligated themselves to pay a third of a shekel c. 75 cents yearly for the service of the temple. NE 10. 32. In the time of Jesus' earthly ministry, the Jews paid 2 drachmas to the temple. When asked whether Jesus complied with this taxation, O textui acute miritra longo, tax collector 1070 of taxation. For instance, when Pharaoh Necho made Jehoiakim his vassal and imposed a heavy fine or tribute on Judah, Jehoiakim raised the necessary funds by having his subjects pay a certain sum according to each one's individual tax rate. 2 Kai 23. 31-35. During the Persian period, the Jews with the exception of the priests and others serving at the sanctuary, who were exempted by Artaxerxes Longimanus had to pay tax Aramaic, mid-middle.dar or mean-middle.dar, tribute below, and toll halak. As for 13, 20. 7. 24 mid-middle.dar is thought to designate personal tax on individuals. Below, a tax on consumer items, excise. And halak, toll paid by travelers at road stations or over fords. The mid-middle.dar translated tribute in as KJ, NW at NE 5. 4 must have been quite high, for many of the Jews had to borrow money to pay it. Besides having to care for the taxes levied by the Persians, the Jews normally also had to pay for the support of the governor. NE 5. 14, 15. In the 1st century CE the Jews very much resented the payment of taxes, not only on account of the corruption prevalent among tax collectors, but also because this forced them to acknowledge their subjection to Rome. See tax collector. However, both Jesus Christ and the Apostle Paul showed that it was proper to pay taxes to Caesar, or the superior authorities. Mount 22. 17-21. Row 13. 1, 7.